Welcome to the Dark Files. I'm your host. Tonight, we step into the dim spaces where real stories linger, 5 true accounts from Reddit, each with its own shadows. There's a kind of quiet that comes just before midnight when the world is still and honesty feels heavier. That's where these stories live. Let's move through them together slowly, one by one. The house that would not let go. In a quiet Indiana suburb, 2 former lovers share a home split by paperwork, debt, and silence. A house colder than its broken air. A thin layer of frost clings to the window glass. The sun outside is pale and uncertain. Inside the house, silence hangs heavy. It is Indiana in winter, and in this small home, the tension is colder than the air. The house sits near the end of a street lined with bare trees and parked cars dusted with salt. Its bricks are faded. The porch light flickers against the gray dusk. 6 years ago, 2 people bought it together. A woman, now 29, and a man called John, 30. They were not yet enemies then. They had walked through empty rooms together, her tracing fingers along cool drywall, him tapping at windows to test their soundness. Laughter echoed in the hollow kitchen as they argued about paint swatches. When the deal closed, their names went side by side on the deed, and John alone signed for the mortgage. For a while, it felt like a beginning. That was 6 years gone. Now they are exes, roommates out of necessity and legality. Both date other people. Their lives have forked, but paperwork lingers like dust in corners. 2 years ago, after they split, neither could buy out the other's share or afford to move. So they stayed. Each night brought them back to separate rooms, hers at the end of the hall with the old radiator ticking against cold, his across from hers with a door that rarely closed all the way. There is no warmth between them now, only obligations. Last September, the air conditioner failed. The house pressed close with heat and humidity until sweat gathered on every surface. Windows stuck in their frames. The 2 sat at opposite ends of the kitchen table, not quite looking at each other while they discussed options. There was not enough saved between them for repairs, so they took out a personal loan together. She worked at a local bank. Her name and his appeared side by side on new paperwork. The interest rate dipped lower because of her job. Still, it was money owed, a sum that would follow both until paid in full. John earned more than she did, but each month when payment came due, she sent her portion, always more than his. 3/4 of every payment came from her account. The remainder arrived late or in smaller amounts from John's. Winter pressed in again this year with fresh tensions. Arguments started softly, doors closing harder than usual, dishes left untouched on counters, but soon sharpened into threats. John told her to leave. He said it late one evening after returning from work. His voice was flat. He stood just inside the living room doorway, hands in his pockets. She sat on the couch sorting old mail into neat piles. "I want you out by January 1st. The words did not tremble or rise in anger. They fell cold and final between them. She looked up but did not answer right away. He stared at his shoes. The house was not ready for one person to leave, not yet. There were things left undone. Windows half replaced, drafts curling under doors, a master bedroom still waiting for repairs he had promised months before. She had planned to move in with her boyfriend once those things were finished. A small promise made over coffee mugs in another kitchen far from this one. Her boyfriend waited quietly for news that never seemed to come, but John would not wait anymore. She set one condition before she would go. He must refinance the personal loan, remove her name so she would not owe money on a house she no longer lived in or wanted any part of. He refused. Night after night became repetition. John insisting she leave. Her insisting he take responsibility for the debt. Silence settling like dust after each argument. He told her to just remove her name from the loan, as if names could be erased with an eraser or crossed out with ink. She tried to explain. At her bank and any bank, It required his initiative to refinance and take sole responsibility for repayment. He accused her of lying. It is December now. Wind rattles loose siding as another argument dies away behind closed doors. In the hallway between their rooms sits a stack of moving boxes packed weeks too early, her life reduced to cardboard and tape waiting for permission to leave. In the mornings, she makes coffee alone in the kitchen while John showers upstairs. The hiss of water muffled by walls that once held laughter and plans for spring gardens that never grew. Sometimes she lingers by the window watching neighborhood children walk to school, bundled against cold that creeps through gaps around unfinished panes, the ones John has never replaced despite his promises. At night, there are messages from her boyfriend, questions about when she will finally be free of this place, reassurances that patience will hold a little longer, reminders that there are better days ahead far from this house and its debts. But freedom is tangled in signatures and numbers typed into computer screens at banks where policy leaves no room for mercy or shortcuts. She calls the lending department again. A familiar voice greets her by name but offers nothing new. Unless John agrees to refinance the loan into his name alone, she remains bound to it by law and ledger alike. Outside, snow begins to fall, soft flakes drifting through weak yellow streetlights onto sidewalks already slick with old ice. Inside, she stands at the kitchen counter sorting bills into two piles, hers and his, debt divided but never separated. John comes home late some nights now, sometimes bringing someone else whose laughter echoes briefly down silent halls before fading behind his bedroom door. They do not speak unless forced by necessity, a leaky pipe under the sink, a missed payment reminder tacked above the thermostat, questions about whose turn it is to buy groceries though neither eats much anymore beneath this roof. On weekends, she packs another box, books wrapped in sweaters for padding, picture frames hidden beneath layers of shirts folded tight against breakage, mugs collected from vacations long past, stacked carefully, so handles will not snap under weight or carelessness when finally carried away from here. She walks through empty rooms, tracing fingers along cool drywall, as if searching for some trace of who they were when this house was new. A memory hidden beneath layers of paint applied over years, marked by disappointment and half-kept promises. After midnight sometimes, she hears John pacing above, the slow, measured steps of someone counting time, until something changes, though neither knows what that will look like anymore. The furnace hums unevenly through vents clogged with dust. Window units rattle against sashes warped by summer heat, never quite tamed even after repairmen dragged tools up wooden stairs last September during that week, when both pretended they could fix things, if only given one more chance or one more loan approved by someone who remembers their faces, if not their story. There are nights when sleep does not come easily, when memories replay themselves in fragments. A front porch painted together before rain washed color down cracked steps, a mortgage signing where hands shook less from fear than excitement, a fight over groceries left too long in backseat car heat, a door slammed so hard picture frames shivered on living room walls, a promise whispered over shared blankets that nothing would change so long, as both names stayed written side by side on every line, requiring signature or sacrifice alike. Now everything has changed except those names. Still linked by law, though hearts parted seasons ago, and lives diverged into separate calendars, marked by birthdays celebrated apart, and holidays spent elsewhere with new faces around different tables set with food neither remembers, liking half as much as what was lost here between arguments about money owed, and windows needing replacement again before winter settles in for good this time, instead of merely passing through, as excuse for why nothing ever gets finished or forgiven beneath this sagging roof. Longing for repair, no one can afford a loan anymore if ever either could have it all without help borrowed at interest rates, discounted only slightly. because one works behind counters tallying debts belonging mostly to strangers who pay what they owe without question before moving on toward homes untouched by stories like these, where endings do not require permission from those unwilling to let go even when every reason says otherwise, if only someone will sign first, so everyone else can finally breathe easy. Somewhere far removed from this address, printed atop every bill arriving monthly like clockwork, demanding answers. Neither has left to give beyond silence louder than any argument echoing through empty rooms waiting for someone else's footsteps, where once laughter lived instead. There's a cold clarity in moments like that, when all the noise drops away and you're left with something raw and unfixable. It makes you wonder how thin the surface really is between order and everything else. The Forgotten Ledger. A man sits alone at his kitchen table, sifting through public records on a faded laptop. Outside, the Oregon sky hangs low and gray. Inside, a quiet question grows. What happens to a life when pieces of it are hidden away, sealed in files he never knew existed? There is no sound except the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the soft tapping of fingers against a keyboard. The man sits hunched over, the kitchen light painting his face in wan yellow. It is late, past midnight, when he types his own name into the county court records website. He expects nothing, maybe an old parking ticket, some bureaucratic reminder from years ago. But something else appears. His name, his birth date, another name listed as conservator, his parent. The word protected person. He leans closer to the screen. The cursor blinks gently beside the docket number. There are case entries stretching back decades, a sequence of dates and legal notations that mean little to him at first glance. Yet they are all tied to him. Each line is another piece of a story he has never been told. He scrolls further. There are references to accounts set up in his name, a bank account, an annuity fund. He reads that money was withdrawn from these accounts on his 18th birthday. There is no record of his involvement, just a dry notation that funds were dispersed, that the conservatorship ended. The kitchen clock ticks in the background. The man's hand trembles slightly as he clicks through sealed and restricted records, most locked behind permissions he cannot access. Only fragments are visible: names, dates, amounts, terse lines written in the language of courts and bureaucracy. The night is silent but for his breathing and the faint click of keys as he searches for more. He requests copies of every document he can reach, filling out forms with unfamiliar anxiety. Outside, rain starts to fall, soft at first, then steadier, pattering against the window pane. The next morning comes slowly. Light seeps through blinds warped by age and dust. He sits at the same table with coffee gone cold, staring at printouts and digital screens. Each page brings another question. How could this have happened without his knowledge? How could a childhood pass under such silent supervision? He remembers nothing unusual from those early years, only ordinary days. School lunches packed by tired hands, birthdays marked by cake and soft voices singing from another room. His parent was always present but always distant in ways he could not name then. There were envelopes, sometimes mail, that arrived and disappeared before he could see it. He had been told nothing about trusts or funds or legal guardianships beyond the usual rules of childhood. There was never any discussion about accounts in his name or money put aside for him. Sifting through memories now feels like digging through damp earth for something long buried. At work, he finds himself distracted, his eyes drawn again and again to the growing stack of papers on his desk at home. On lunch breaks, he calls government offices, repeating his request for information. Operators transfer him from extension to extension. Each new voice sounds uncertain or indifferent. One day, a clerk tells him many records are sealed because they involve minors or financial protection measures. She gives him a list of forms to fill out if he wishes to petition for access, but warns that some files may remain closed forever. He fills them out anyway, each form another attempt to break through layers of silence wrapped around his past. Weeks pass this way, in waiting rooms where clocks tick too loudly, on hold with courthouse staff who shuffle papers out of sight. At night, sleep comes late, if at all. He lies awake counting shadows moving across the ceiling as headlights pass outside. He tries to remember if there was ever a hint, some strange conversation overheard between adults, some letter tucked away in a drawer he was not supposed to open. Nothing surfaces but fragments: his parents' quick movements when mail arrived, whispered phone calls behind closed doors, a sense even then that something was being managed just out of view. Documents arrive gradually, a letter here, an official transcript there. Most are incomplete or heavily redacted, signatures blurred out, account numbers crossed through with thick black ink. From what remains, he pieces together only outlines. Accounts established shortly after his birth, funds transferred regularly into them, reports filed each year by someone acting on his behalf, final withdrawals made in the weeks after he turned 18, all authorized by someone else's hand. He sees now how easy it would have been never to know, to live decades without ever suspecting that parts of his life had been managed behind heavy doors and sealed envelopes. He tries calling old family friends for answers, but is met with confusion or silence. Some seem genuinely surprised when he asks. Others pause too long before responding and change the subject quickly. In quiet moments between tasks at work or chores at home, he thinks about what might have happened had things been different, if someone had spoken up or left a single document where he might find it earlier. Legal advice becomes another labyrinth. Endless lists of specialists with titles that mean little to him: estate lawyers, trust attorneys, probate experts. He schedules appointments anyway, sitting quietly in offices filled with heavy books and framed degrees, while professionals explain terms like fiduciary duty and breach of trust in words that sound distant and cold. Each meeting ends much as it began, with more questions than answers and another sheaf of paperwork to review at home under flickering light. The kitchen fills with stacks of documents, envelopes addressed in unfamiliar handwriting, court printouts marked confidential, bank statements listing amounts too large for any memory he owns. He keeps searching for some clue among them, a note scribbled in haste, an explanation meant for him alone, but finds only numbers and codes stacked atop one another like stones closing off an old well. Some nights he dreams of locked rooms filled with ledgers bearing his name, a maze of shelves lined with files stamped private, rows upon rows of envelopes unopened since childhood. In these dreams there are voices just beyond hearing: soft footsteps down empty corridors, whispered arguments behind glass doors, questions asked but never answered. Morning brings only silence broken by rain tapping steadily against glass, a reminder that time passes whether or not its secrets are revealed. He visits banks named in old court documents, but finds records purged or archived beyond easy reach. Their staff polite but unhelpful, their systems built to erase anything older than required by law. Back home each evening, he sits beneath dim lights reviewing what little remains, a ledger entry here, a signature there, each one proof that something real once existed just beyond his grasp. There is no confrontation, no admission from anyone involved, only a slow realization that some truths may be lost forever beneath layers of routine and indifference. Yet still, he persists, contacting new lawyers recommended by strangers online, requesting more files from county clerks who barely remember cases, so old their paper has yellowed with age. Time stretches onward, the search becoming part of daily life now, a ritual performed between errands and meals cooked for one beneath humming fluorescent bulbs. Through it all there lingers a sense of absence, a gap where certainty should be, an echo left behind by withheld explanations and vanished funds meant for someone who never received them. No answers arrive in sudden flashes, no revelations shouted across dinner tables, or delivered in midnight phone calls from distant relatives, awakened by guilt or regret. Instead, there is only slow accumulation, a gathering weight pressing down each time another avenue closes off without resolution or reply. The man moves through rooms lined with paperwork searching for closure that may never come, his footsteps muffled on worn linoleum floors as rain falls quietly outside night after night. It lingers, how quickly things can turn, how helplessness can creep in even when you think you're prepared. Some things settle deep and stay with you far longer than they should. The stone that would not speak, the mystery of the Ants du Carreau inscription. Salt air licks at a battered stone on the Breton coast, its surface carved with an alphabet that resists every attempt to give it voice. In this quiet place, history's riddle waits beneath the moss and the tides. A cold wind moves across the bay at Plougastel d'Isles. The water is gray, restless, flecked with white. On the shore at Ants du Carreau, among rocks battered smooth by centuries, one stands apart. It is 4 feet high, weather darkened, its face scarred by letters no one can read. The inscription begins with a line, GROCARDREARDIO letter 1A8 EEVBEO. The words do not belong to any language spoken here or anywhere else. There is a break before DREAR, a hesitation in the stone. People walk this stretch of coast. Some are locals, used to the silence of stones and salt. Others come only for the mystery. They step around puddles left by the tide, boots crunching on gravel and broken shells. They pause before the rock, eyes tracing grooves dulled by rain and time. The inscription runs to 38 lines, 334 characters in all. Most are Roman capitals, clear enough in their shape, but scattered among them are oddities. A Greek theta, a lowercase gamma, a Cyrillic e, a backward s that recurs like a stutter in the text. There are numbers 186 and symbols that do not belong to any alphabet at all. A crescent moon, a heart etched with a cross at its center. Some lines are single words, others sprawl into 2 or 3. Each detail feels deliberate but offers no key. No one knows when these marks were cut into the granite face. The earliest certainty comes from another hand, a Russian soldier who pressed, 1920, into the edge of the stone over 100 years ago. By then, the strange letters were already there. In 1979, someone documented them in detail for the first time. 5 years later, every mark was transcribed and divided into 5 parts. The first part runs to 21 lines closest to resembling language, while the others appear fragmented, groups of 4 or 5 lines each, some trailing off as if abandoned mid-thought. The stone stands silent through storm and sun. Lichen creeps along its base. Children pass on bicycles. Old men shuffle by with dogs tugging at their leads. Tourists linger just long enough for photographs. Each visitor leaves with questions unspoken. In recent years, the mystery has grown teeth. Scholars and amateurs alike have tried to break its code. Linguists with algorithms, cryptographers with frequency charts, even competitions announced in newspapers across France, promising reward for any who could reveal what lay beneath those lines. Machines analyze vowel ratios and consonant clusters, searching for patterns against every known tongue, French, Breton, Latin, Greek, Russian. Yet nothing fits precisely. 5 vowels appear consistent with natural languages, a E, I, O, gamma. Consonants crowd around them, 27 shapes in all, but no word emerges that anyone recognizes. Still, something resists randomness here. Letters repeat in rhythms too steady for chance. Numbers nest within words as if meant to be there from the start. ALVO4, I-186. T always lands at the end of words, a rule observed without exception. The Hartan cross symbol draws particular notice, a small heart outlined neatly in stone, its center pierced by a cross like an ancient badge or secret sign. Around it traces of numerals. 1181, though some think erosion has obscured an earlier, 1781 or 1787. Those dates would place it just before revolution swept France, an era when secrets traveled quietly through forbidden networks and symbols carried weight beyond their lines. Brittany itself clings to secrets, its coastline rugged and remote even today, its history tangled with uprisings and allegiances whispered behind closed doors. Little survives in writing from insurgents who might have worked against royalist regimes here 2 centuries past. No one can say what ciphers they favored or if they trusted codes at all. It is late afternoon on the shore now. Shadows stretch across sand and weed-choked pools left by retreating waves. The rock catches last light on one edge. Elsewhere it vanishes into gray-green shadow. A gull lands atop it, briefly white feathers catching sun, and then lifts away again into empty sky. Silence returns. Somewhere nearby, someone reads aloud from a notebook. A letter 1A8 OMG a ROP a C gamma Dafit. The line hangs between 2 breaths, a sequence that means nothing in any language yet speaks of intent all the same. Other details emerge under close study. Holy Roman lettered words like GROCAR and AOMA fail to match anything known from Europe's tongues past or present. Backward S's persist inexplicably throughout, as if part of some private alphabet. Words split by dashes, DAAOMA, give no clue whether they hide names or places or something else entirely. Those who spend months poring over data find themselves circling back to what little can be asserted. The text is not random noise. It is not English or French or Breton disguised. Its structure suggests encoding a hybrid cipher, perhaps using both substitution and transposition, but proof remains elusive. In 2019, authorities called for answers nationwide, a public competition seeking translation or even partial sense where none had come before. 2 winning entries emerged from hundreds submitted. Neither agreed with the other nor could claim definitive victory over silence. Minor discoveries only, statistical hints of pattern, recognition that certain substitutions, letter 1A8 for S, E for N, make no difference to overall analysis. Lingering suspicion that whatever message lies inside may never have been meant for more than one set of eyes. Some believe that Hartan Cross points back to insurgency, symbols once scratched on barn doors, or scrawled in margins as warnings or pledges among those who conspired against crown and church alike, just before blood ran in Paris streets. But Brittany's rebels left few records worth decoding now, their signals lost as surely as their names beneath moss and centuries' reign. Others note only that language itself seems strained against secrecy here. Lines difficult to pronounce aloud even by those fluent in many dialects, rhythms more suited to code than speech, endings clipped short where meaning might have flowered given different soil. A man stands before the stone at dusk as rain begins to fall again, softly at first then harder until drops bead along grooves cut deep into granite decades or centuries ago. He runs his fingers gently over IVEL a CH EATSIT DAAOMA, feeling each ridge beneath cold skin, but finding no warmth in recognition. Somewhere far from here others sit behind glowing screens, adjusting filters, feeding new variables into software built for wartime encryption or medieval glossaries alike, hoping for flickers of sense amid rows of output columns headed only by frustration. Yet time rolls forward as always, tides rising and falling twice daily around ankles of this one stubborn witness on France's ragged edge, a monument not to conquest nor defeat, but to endurance without explanation. A child visiting with her mother touches the crescent moon symbol near the bottom edge, a shape she knows only from storybooks about wolves howling at night or sailors steering homeward by borrowed light, and asks what it means here among so many silent letters. Her mother only shrugs quietly and takes her hand as they turn away toward brighter streets farther inland, where mysteries are smaller and less persistent than this one carved beside restless water long ago. In this way, curiosity persists, but resolution remains distant, each visitor walking away with pieces they cannot fit together. The number I-186, coupled oddly with EEI letter 1A8, on what appears to be a final line, yet yields nothing more than doubt dressed up as possibility. Rainwater pools in hollows carved deeper year on year, while lichen advances grain by grain across forgotten names and unfinished sentences scratched into hard stone, when memory itself was still malleable enough to hold secrets tight against erasure. Night falls slowly over Anse du Carreau, the wind picking up again as stars blink out above slate-colored sea. And still, this rock keeps watch alone, unreadable but unforgotten. Sometimes people carry things you'd never guess just by looking at them. There's a heaviness in that quiet, a reminder that everyone has corners of their life no one else sees. The transfer. A house stands on the edge of a Vermont town, framed by maples and silence. Inside, a plan begins, quiet, practical, and meant to outlast the years. In Vermont, winter comes early. The air grows thin and cold around mid-October, tracing the edges of windows with frost. In one house, a clapboard structure at the end of a narrow road, lights burn on as dusk settles. The kitchen clock ticks. The owner, a man in his 50s, stands at the counter sorting bills beneath weak overhead light. Outside, the snow begins its slow descent, covering tire tracks, burying footprints. The children still live here sometimes. 2 sons, a daughter. Their things are scattered across rooms. A jacket draped over a banister, boots melting into puddles on the mat. In the living room, photographs line a shelf, school portraits behind glass, faces caught in younger years. The man glances at them as he carries his mug to the sink. He moves quietly through his own house, steps measured, careful not to disturb the threshold between rooms. He has lived here most of his life, paid down each mortgage check month by month, season by season. The house is near paid off now. Only a few more years remain before the bank's claim disappears for good. The thought has weight, a slow gravity that tugs at him as he walks from room to room. Outside, snow gathers on the roof and along the porch railing. The world narrows to white and gray as night deepens. In this stillness, he considers what comes next. A smaller place on the same land, something built with his own hands or hired out if his body fails him. An ADU, a cottage tucked behind the main house, close enough that he can see the porch light from its window. He is not old yet, but he feels age in his knees and shoulders when he rises in the morning. Some nights he wonders how many winters remain before climbing stairs becomes impossible. He makes lists in his head: contractors, blueprints, building permits. He reads about aging in place. The phrase feels clinical but also comforting in its practicality. At dinner one evening, the family gathers around the table. His daughter pushes peas around her plate with her fork. She is 21 and restless to leave home again, but returned for winter break. His younger son wears headphones around his neck even when silent. Music leaks faintly from one ear cup. "Thinking about building something out back," he says eventually. The words hang there for a moment before anyone responds. "What kind?" "Small place," he says. "Maybe for me later on." His eldest nods without lifting his eyes from his phone. "Could rent it," offers his daughter after a while. "Make some money," he shrugs. "Could do that too." They eat in silence after that, the kind of silence that fills rooms where people know each other well but have little left to say about certain things. At night in bed, he thinks about paperwork, deeds and taxes, transfer forms signed at long desks under fluorescent lights downtown. He remembers stories told by neighbors of houses lost to debts or claimed by hospitals when someone grows too frail to fight back, nursing homes that take more than they give, families left sorting through belongings after signatures dry. He wonders, could you sell your house before all that happens? Pass it to someone you trust while you're still healthy enough to watch them take it. Would it work? Is it legal? He looks it up online late at night, searches buried among tabs for insurance statements and utility bills. Forums full of strangers ask similar questions. Can I sell my house to my son for $1? Will Medicaid come after us? What happens when I need care? In these threads, answers flicker back and forth, some confident, others uncertain or tinged with worry born from experience. He reads quietly, pressing his fingers into his temples as the glow of the screen paints strange shapes across his face. One afternoon, he walks the property line alone. The snow has melted by then. Spring is beginning to push through mud and brittle grass along the fence posts. He stops where an old apple tree leans against wind and time, branches bare except for lichen clinging stubbornly to bark. Here would be good ground for building, far enough from the main house for privacy, but close enough that footsteps echo between doors on quiet nights. He pictures windows open in summer, sunlight falling across unfinished wood floors, younger voices drifting from one porch to another. Later, he visits hardware stores with graph paper folded in his jacket pocket, sketches drawn during lunch breaks or sleepless stretches of early morning hours when nothing else waits to be done. He measures distances with careful steps, 10 feet from maple roots to foundation, 6 feet from back door to garden gate. His kids come and go with their own schedules now, work shifts traded for college classes or long drives spent chasing jobs downstate. They answer texts sporadically but return for birthdays or holidays when asked. When they gather in springtime, a rare Saturday when everyone's free, they walk together through damp grass behind the house as he describes what might stand there someday. Frame walls first, then shingles hammered into place, plumbing lines snaking below frost line, rooms small but warm against December wind. You'd really move out here? His youngest asks, incredulous. If I had to, he answers simply. His daughter looks away toward where highway sounds drift distant beneath new leaves growing overhead. That night, papers pile up on the dining table. Property tax statements spread beside dog-eared brochures about retirement options mailed unsolicited every few months. He writes numbers in columns, expenses versus income, estimated costs scratched out and rewritten, question marks multiplying beside uncertain entries labeled future medical care or long-term nursing needs. He reads more estate planning guides mailed free from banks trying to sell him accounts, pamphlets warning about Medicaid recovery programs that claw back assets if you enter assisted living unprepared. The next morning, fog hangs low over fields outside his window, the world blurred at its edges like memories growing less distinct with time. He makes phone calls between chores. County clerks who speak quickly and grow impatient with too many questions. Lawyers' offices where secretaries promise someone will call back after lunch or maybe not until Tuesday next week if they're busy downtown at court. The process takes weeks, not because answers are far away, but because each step requires patience and repetition. Forms filled out twice, signatures notarized under flickering fluorescent bulbs, fees paid in cash across scuffed countertops where strangers shuffle past with their own burdens hidden inside manila envelopes or battered folders held tight against their chests. Through it all, he moves steadily, the way people do when there's no other choice but forward movement, even if each footstep lands heavier than expected. On Sundays, he sits on his front porch watching clouds drift slow above bare treetops, a mug cooling beside him. Silence filling spaces where conversation used to be easy, but now seems unnecessary unless spoken aloud by force of habit or duty alone. Some evenings, he draws up contracts, sample agreements downloaded from websites promising peace of mind. If you only follow their instructions closely enough not to miss anything important along pages dense, with legal terms printed in fine gray typeface, almost too small to read without squinting hard against fading daylight streaming through lace curtains sewn decades ago by hands steadier than his own are now. He considers what it would mean to sell your home before anyone asks you why you're doing it, before illness takes away your strength or strangers begin asking about savings accounts, and monthly bills tallied up into numbers larger than any single year's harvest ever brought in from this soil, once so rich beneath black boots pulled on every morning before sunrise drove frost away, for another day's labor begun again, without complaint or hesitation, until dusk returned everything back into darkness once more without ceremony or applause expected by anyone left standing still inside these walls after everyone else has gone elsewhere seeking what cannot be found here anymore, no matter how long you wait or hope otherwise against reason itself, sometimes stronger than memory alone, can bear without breaking entirely apart beneath pressure, felt only by those who try hardest not to let anyone else see them falter even briefly, if possible at all costs, paid privately behind locked doors no one else will ever need enter unless invited first by mistake or necessity combined together into something neither wished for nor avoided altogether. If truth were ever spoken aloud between breaths caught sharp against teeth clenched tight, as fists held hidden deep inside pockets, turned out empty save loose change clinking softly together like rain falling thin upon tin roofs, left rusted through seasons beyond counting now except backwards toward what used to matter once upon a time less complicated than this moment, waiting quietly between heartbeats stretched thinner than hope itself some days. More than others depending always on weather turning colder sooner than expected almost every year, since children grew taller than doorways measured carefully. Each birthday marked off calendar squares torn away faster as months slip by unnoticed. Except when night falls earlier than anyone wants reminding them, nothing lasts forever despite promises made sincerely enough when spoken first, without knowing what lay ahead beyond headlights sweeping gravel driveways, winding homeward slowly beneath stars. Indifferent above fields lying fallow, until spring returns again demanding payment, never quite enough no matter how well-intentioned each effort begins anew regardless of outcome already decided, before anyone realizes it's over just like that, suddenly without warning given beforehand regardless of wishes, whispered late at night hoping perhaps something different might happen instead, if only luck held out longer than expected, which seldom happens really, unless you count small mercies found hidden between moments ordinary enough not worth mentioning aloud, except now perhaps for reasons unclear, except necessity dictates, otherwise sometimes whether we admit it willingly or not doesn't change anything truly meaningful either way. I keep thinking about trust, how it builds up slowly but can snap so suddenly. There's an ache to realizing how fragile safety is, even among people you think you know. Cold shelter, the weight of an open door. In the gray hush of an Alaskan winter, a daughter's act of kindness becomes a slow unraveling, her own home turning strange, the walls closing in with every silent hour. A snowfield stretches wide outside Anchorage, rolling white and brittle beneath a sky the color of slate. Quiet presses against the houses here. Each one holds its own warmth, its own secrets. Inside one three-bedroom home, heat pushes back against the cold barely. It began with an empty room and an open door. The daughter and her boyfriend had measured out their lives in careful steps. New mortgage, fresh paint, hopes that fit inside a guest bedroom. When her mother left for another state, she took only what she needed. She bought a house for the men she left behind, a father broken by illness and a brother who watched over him. The men stayed where they were, unmoving as stones. The house meant for them gathered dust and silence. Winter came early that year. Outside, ice crept up window panes and turned the air sharp. Inside, the daughter weighed her choices. She could leave them out their father and brother together, thin walls between them and frost, or she could let them in. She said yes to family. It was supposed to be temporary, a kindness measured by weeks or months at most. She expected small things in return, maybe some groceries, maybe help with chores. Nothing written down, nothing signed. The father moved in first, slow and shuffling, shoulders hunched against pain. His body bore old marks, a history of cancer flickering behind his eyes, fingers curled by arthritis and surgeries gone wrong. Both arms useless except as reminders of what had been lost. He leaned on his son for almost everything: food, medication, even standing from a chair. The brother was quiet and steady. He watched his father with practiced patience and kept his presence small in the new house. The daughter never worried about him. The father settled into the guest room at the end of the hall. At first, he slept for days at a time while snow fell outside in heavy sheets. The house grew warmer in places, too warm sometimes, grease hanging in the air from food fried at midnight. Blankets dragged across floors until they gathered dust and crumbs. Things shifted subtly at first. A missing remote control here, a half-empty bottle of whiskey there. She noticed her father's habits before she wanted to admit it. A silver bracelet gone from the bathroom counter one morning. A leather wallet emptied of bills after she left it near the kitchen sink. A laptop missing from its usual place on the desk. Each time she asked about these things, her father shrugged or scowled or turned away altogether. "Maybe you lost it," he'd say without meeting her eyes. "Maybe it got thrown out by accident." Pawn slips began appearing in odd places, scraps folded into jacket pockets or wedged between couch cushions. Names not hers on the receipts, but items she recognized all too well. Electronics, jewelry, tools left behind by friends after long nights of drinks and laughter that now seemed far away. Her boyfriend started keeping his things locked up in their shared bedroom. The daughter bought small safes for what little valuables she had left. Other changes crept in on bare feet. The father stopped wearing clothes around the house entirely unless someone made a point of asking him to put something on. Even then he resisted. A pair of stained sweatpants sometimes grudgingly pulled on when visitors arrived, dropped again soon after they left. Grease-coated surfaces that once gleamed clean, stovetop slick with oil, countertops smeared with butter fingerprints that never quite faded no matter how hard she scrubbed. Trash piled up wherever he settled, crumpled wrappers stuffed between sofa cushions, empty soda cans lining windowsills, banana peels tossed onto carpets as if they belonged there. Conversations grew shorter each night. "You need to help out more around here." He would grunt or mumble something under his breath and turn up the television volume until voices blurred into static. Her friends stopped coming by altogether after one evening, when her father screamed insults at them from his recliner, words thick with bitterness and old anger that clung to every corner of the living room long after he fell asleep where he sat. Afterward, she tried to talk to him again, gently at first, asking if he could try to be kinder to people who visited their home. "It's my house too," he spat back at her without looking up from his phone screen. "You wouldn't have a roof over your head if it wasn't for me." But it wasn't true. The mortgage was hers. Everything inside paid for by her work or her boyfriend's overtime hours spent hauling freight through icy streets while traffic lights blinked red above empty intersections. Her brother stayed quiet through all of this, clearing dishes without being asked, patching holes in drywall where their father had slammed doors too hard during one of his frequent rages, washing clothes stained beyond saving just so there would be something clean for their father to wear if he ever chose to put anything on at all. As days past winter pressed closer to the windowsills, the cold outside relentless but nothing compared to what settled between those walls each night after dinner ended in silence or shouting or both. She tried reasoning again. "Dad, we need rules if you're going to stay here." He laughed then, a wet cough breaking into sharp words. "Go ahead," he said hoarsely. "Try to kick me out." He told her about courtrooms filled with men like him, old and frail, and pitied by judges, who would never force them into snowbanks or shelters crowded with strangers coughing in their sleep. He promised appeals if she tried anything legal, threatened lawyers she couldn't afford, swore he'd drag it out until spring thawed every road in Alaska if that's what it took. The daughter felt her world shrinking with every word spoken aloud in that kitchen, the table between them cluttered with pill bottles and coffee mugs stained brown at their rims. Sometimes late at night, she listened for sounds from his room, drawers opening softly, footsteps muffled by thick rugs, doors creaking open when everyone else should have been asleep but wasn't really sleeping anymore. Not well, not deeply enough for dreams to take root. She started locking her bedroom door each night, not because she thought he'd hurt her, but because there were so few boundaries left that even this one felt necessary somehow. Proof that there was still something left untouched within those walls, even as everything else fell into disarray piece by piece day after day. On mornings when sunlight managed to break through low clouds, she found herself staring out frosted windows toward streets covered in fresh snow, wondering how much longer this could last before something broke for good inside herself, or inside someone else trapped beneath the same roof as him. The brother sometimes lingered near doorways, as if waiting for permission to speak, but rarely did. His own exhaustion etched deep beneath bloodshot eyes as he cleaned up after their father's latest messes without complaint or expectation of thanks ever being given back again. Groceries vanished faster than before, food disappearing from shelves overnight only for wrappers to reappear behind radiators or wedged beneath armchairs, where no one else would think to look, except maybe him if he cared enough, which most days seemed unlikely anymore given how little interest he showed in anything outside himself these days anyway. Some evenings ended quietly enough, television flickering blue light across faces drawn tight with tension, but others unraveled fast, a raised voice echoing down hallways too narrow for escape, plates shattered on tile floors, accusations hurled back and forth like knives, barely missing their marks each time, but leaving scars all the same regardless whether anyone acknowledged them openly afterward or not at all ever again. If possible, somehow just this once, please let tonight be different than last night. But it never was, not really, not ever truly changed, no matter how many times they tried, starting overcome morning light shining dull through frostbitten glass panes, rattling soft in bitter wind outside, waiting patiently just beyond reach, always just out of sight, forever holding steady right there, where hope used to live once upon a time, before all this began unfolding so slowly nobody noticed, until it was far too late already anyway, even if they wanted desperately otherwise. Deep down inside, somewhere hidden away beneath layers built up over years spent surviving whatever came next, because nothing else mattered now except getting through another day alive together apart, until someone finally snapped under pressure. Nobody could bear alone indefinitely, regardless what promises had been made once upon, better days lost forever now, along with everything else worth saving, maybe, somehow, possibly someday soon, if luck held long enough, despite evidence mounting steadily against any such outcome coming true anytime soon, least of all here right now, tonight, inside these walls, closing tighter every hour, darkness falling fast outside, while silence thickened like fog across empty rooms, filled only with memories best left unspoken wherever possible, whenever allowed by forces neither kind nor cruel, merely indifferent, always watching silently, never intervening, only bearing witness quietly, patiently, unsympathetically, until morning broke again, bringing nothing new, except more waiting, more hoping, more fear settling deeper than before, each passing hour dragging slower, heavier, colder than last, until finally someone reached breaking point, unable any longer, pretending otherwise, no matter what consequences followed. Afterward, inevitably, predictably, mercilessly, just like winter itself, returning year after year, without fail, never relenting, never forgiving, just being exactly what it was, and always would be, whether anyone liked it or not, ever again, now or then or someday later. When all this was finally nothing more than memory buried deep beneath layers of snow, undisturbed, unremarkable, forgotten almost entirely, except perhaps by those left behind, still counting losses alone together, as always has been. Always will be, always must remain, so long as kindness endures somewhere, however briefly, however faintly, however tragically, doomed from start, yet offered anyway, despite knowing better, despite having learned nothing good ever comes easy, least of all shelter given freely when cold waits patiently just outside, every door ready to claim what warmth remains inside. By now it's hard to ignore the weight in all these stories, the sense that none of us are as distant from darkness as we'd like to believe. It settles in your chest and changes the way the night feels. That's all for tonight. If these stories stay with you, you're not alone, they linger for me too. Sometimes it's easier not to look at what hides in plain sight, but there's a strange comfort in sharing these truths together. Subscribe if you want more stories from the darkest corners of Reddit. Until next time, keep your light close.